Hey y'all, if you already subscribed, welcome back my darling, and if you have not yet subscribed, subscribe and join a part of the Morgan Beauty Gang. So you can read the title, you guys. This is one of those videos that I'm not going to say that I'd never had intentions to make, because number one, I haven't heard from this person in a very long time, and number two, I knew that I felt safe enough to do this video because it's been a while since I've had, a long time actually, since I've had any issues with this person. So this was always a video that I intended to make from the start because I want to share my story. And I know in the beginning I was very naive and also really stupid. So I do want to share my story to help anyone who may be having the same thing in the process of happening or already happening, so I can A, tell you what not to do, and B, maybe give you some advice and some tips on what to do if you have the same type of situation. Even though most of the people that I've talked to with stalker situations, they are a lot different in almost every case. So even though they're the same, they can be very different. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let me tell you guys my stalker story. So this is going to go back to when I was 18 years old. I had just graduated high school and I had a boyfriend at the time that I did not love or care about at all. To be honest, it was a guy that I was dating because I wanted to make my ex jealous. I was young, I was immature, whatever. This was a long time ago. So me and this guy are at Texas Roadhouse, which if you're not familiar with what Texas Roadhouse is, it might just be in the South, I'm not sure, but it's a steakhouse pretty much. And it's a place where you can basically, you could throw your peanut shells like in the floor everywhere, but now there's like a waiting area where you can throw your peanut shells down in the floor. But it's really good, and their rolls and butter. Anyways, not the point, I digress. So there was nowhere to sit. This Texas Roadhouse where I live is always jam-packed. And this Saturday night was no different. It was slammed. So because there were just two of us, the lady, the hostess, she was like, I'm going to sit and we're going to call the guy that I was dating at the time. We're going to call him Andy. So she's like, I'm going to set you guys over by the bar if that's okay. It was like a really small two-top booth. And I'm like, sure. We go over and we sit. Well, about 20 minutes into us sitting there, Andy looks over at me and he's like, there's this older guy over at the bar and he has not stopped staring at you since we sat down here. Now, just a little bit of a background on Andy. He was very quiet, very reserved, did not like confrontation at all, was literally the polar opposite of me, and not in a good way. Like we were day and night, like it just didn't mesh. But he was just like, I'm letting you know. But he was never the type to like walk up to the bar and say anything. That's why I say that, okay? So we just or whatever, and the waitress, she even notices it, and she's like, is he bothering you? And I was like, no, it's no big deal. Because I'm thinking this is like a 55-year-old man, whatever. I'm not thinking anything. Plus, I'm 18 years old. I completely do not think anything about this, you guys, at all. We go home. Andy drops me off. The next week comes and I go to work. At the time, I was working at a movie theater here in my hometown. And I go to work and I notice this guy is in line for a movie. And I'll never forget, it was a Sunday matinee movie. And that is usually when you get a lot of kids and their parents. So typically, movie theaters will, if there's not a lot of kid movies out, at least ours anyways, they would play like older kid movies. So I think, well, that's really bizarre because he didn't have like a grandkid or anybody with him. So I thought, that's odd. I worked in the ticket booth. He walks up and he's like, hey, do you remember me? And because I'm freaked out, I'm like, yeah, from Texas Roadhouse. He was like, yeah, we're going to call him William. He's like, yeah, my name's William. I just wanted to introduce myself and give you my phone number. And I'm like, oh, no, thank you. I'm seeing someone. All the while I'm panicking. And one of my best friends worked with me at the movie theater. She was right behind me and she's thinking, what in the hell? Okay. Also, another friend of mine at this movie theater, she knows of I mean, everybody knows of this man, pretty much. Everybody knows about him in my life. But another girl that I worked at the movie theater is like, what in the crap? So he's like, well, I'll never give up. I'll never give up. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I'll never give up. And I'm like, well, thanks anyways. I appreciate it. What movie are you here to see? He looks me dead in my eyes and says, oh, I'm not here to see a movie. I came to bring you my phone number, and I'm not leaving until you take it. Well, I was freaked out, so I took the daggone phone number. He calls me right in front of my face, and I had the very first iPhone that ever came out. They had just come out, literally. They hadn't been out long. And my phone rings in my pocket, and I'm like, okay, I got it. And he's like, you save that under William. I'm like, okay. So I save it. Well, the girl that was standing behind my best friend told my boss about this situation. And you guys, now that I'm telling this story, I'm probably going to have to break it up in 2 parts. This is just way too long. So we're going to tell the first half of my stalker story now and the second half in another video because I'm already at 17 minutes and I've not gotten anywhere. So anyways, at the end of the night, my boss walks up to me and he's like, Morgan, I have this man on camera, okay, but I can't hear what he's saying on this camera. Keep in mind, you guys, this is about 2007, 2008, okay? He's like, but I can't hear what he's saying. And I'm like, okay, so what do? I gave this man my number. And my boss is like, what? You gave him your real number? And I was like, yeah. And he called me like right in front of me. Like if I would have gave him my wrong number, like he would have known because he called me like standing there. And he's like, oh my God, why didn't you come get me? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. So I would say probably about 2 weeks go by with no contact from William. And I will never, ever, ever forget this. Because this is the first time in my life where I felt like I was going to be murdered. Like, for real. Like, no exaggeration, no joke. I genuinely felt in my heart of hearts and in my soul that I was going to be murdered. I walk out of my parents' house. Oh my God. And this man is parked in front of our driveway. I literally am such an idiot. I walk up to the truck. And I'm like, hi, can I help you? And he's like, why haven't you called me? And I said, oh, I told you I have a boyfriend. Like, I'm not interested, but thank you. You know, it was really sweet, whatever. He was like, I'm going to call you tonight and you're going to answer the phone. And I said, no, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask that you leave me alone. At this point, I'm starting to get aggravated because he will not leave me alone. And he looks at me with a look that I think about now and literally is giving me goosebumps. He goes, I'm going to call you tonight and you are going to answer. You guys, he drove off. I go about my day. I go to work. I go to walk out at my car. And ever since this happened at work, my boss was either walking me to my car or we were walking in groups. Well, this in particular night, it was me, my best friend at the time, and that girl that, told my boss about the situation. We all walked to my car together. We all parked together. We walked out there together. This man is parked in front of my car, and behind my car is the movie theater. So there's no way for me to get out. There's a car here and a car here. I just remember being so scared. And he's like, where do you think you're going? And I said, I'm going home. I said, you need to leave me alone or I'm calling the police. And he said, oh, you're going to call the police? And I said, yes, I am. I said, because you're scaring me and you have no right to do this. You're coming to my place of work in my home. How do you even know where I live? And he said, we'll discuss that when you call me or you answer my phone call. I think if I remember correctly, he called me once while I was at work, and of course I didn't answer. Well, my boss runs outside. I guess he had seen in the office that this man was out there, and he ran outside and he said, you're not allowed on the property, da-da-da-da-da. Ended up calling the police. The police had him put on a no trespassing. He literally, after even my boss ran out there, you guys, he still did not leave. The police put him on no trespassing. So I didn't see him at work for a while, but he did come back. So time goes on. Me and my family go to the beach. And when we get back from the beach, the day we get back from the beach, I end up going to the mall with a few of my friends. One of the friends was my best friend that I worked with. And we go to the mall and we're walking around, and I come out of Victoria's Secret and I see William standing in the food court, and he's looking at me from the food court, which, you guys, is about a football field away from where Victoria's Secret is. I was freaking panicking. And I look over at my best friend and I'm like, what in the hell am I going to do? This man is psychotic. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? She's like, well, let's just find mall security. So we go look for mall security. I explained to the officer, this man will not leave me alone. He's followed me home. He knows where I work, and he's standing in the food court staring at me. The next thing we know, you guys, I feel a hand on my back. William walks up behind us and says, hey, how are you? And I said, this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the guy. He tries to like play it off with the security officer like he knows me. And because I had my three or four friends with me, they're like, no, you're crazy. She doesn't want anything to do with you and you will not leave her alone. The security guard is like, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. That night, you guys, he called me 67 times. Like, I don't even know how many times. It may have been more than that. It may have been close to 100 times, if I'm being honest. I really don't know. But it was back to back to back until finally my mom is like, forget this shit. We're getting your number changed. Like, this is enough is enough. I'm over it. Well, we get my number changed. Time goes on with nothing. Nothing. I would say, I think the next time I seen him, let me check. The next time I see him, I'm 20 years old. And at this time, I was eating at a restaurant with my nanny. And if you're familiar at all with West Knoxville in East Tennessee, there is a shopping center called Turkey Creek. And inside Turkey Creek, there is a restaurant called Mimi's Cafe. Oddly enough, right next door to Texas Roadhouse in West Knoxville. Not the same Texas Roadhouse where we saw each other the first time, but there's a Texas Roadhouse literally next door. It's so weird. We're sitting there, we're eating whatever. And this particular day, we were going car shopping. My nanny was going to co-sign for me a new car. And all of a sudden, I see William walk through the door, a beeline towards me. He walks, and a hostess like chases him and is like, sir, where are you going? He said, I'll sit right here. And he was pointing at a booth right next to, we were sitting at a table and there was a booth right next to us. I looked at my nanny and I said, that is my stalker. My nanny pulls our waitress over and is like, that man stalks my granddaughter. If you all do not get him out of here right now, I'm calling the police. So they walk over to this man and they're like, sir, due to a patron not being comfortable with you being here, we're going to have to ask you to leave. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. You can call the police. I want to talk to the police. You guys, the police get there. And this is where we find out that there's something like wrong with him. Okay. I mean, obviously he's already followed me home. He's like, come to my work. And I'm like a young girl. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, at first he was 55. I didn't know this at the time until later after like restraining orders and things came, but he was 55 when I first saw him in that Texas Roadhouse, and I was 18 years old. By this point, I'm 20 years old, so that would put him at 57, okay? The police get there, and this man, bold-faced, tells this police officer that I'm his girlfriend, and we're in an argument, and I've not been returning his calls, and I've changed my phone number. You guys, me and my nanny look at the officer, and we're like, absolutely freaking not. This man has continuously harassed me, like, and I haven't heard from him in like 2 years. Well, it was like about a year. And I had no interest in him. I was 20 years old. He was almost 60. And I was like, and the officer said, well, we're pretty sure that there's something like wrong. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, that's fine, but is there any way that I can get like a restraining order or whatever? He tells me, you know, what I need to do to file a restraining order. I'm like, okay. And so at this point, this is when the restraining order gets started. But honestly, I forget about it. I don't hear about him anymore. I don't see him for a while. So, and that is what would happen. It happened twice before I was like, okay, enough. And I went and got a restraining order. So this is the first time that I neglected to go get a restraining order. He didn't contact me that I knew of. I had a Facebook, and I accept a friend's request from someone that was mutual friends with my mom, my sisters, also my stepdad, but my stepdad wasn't like active on Facebook, so he probably just like got on one time and seen this friend's request and accepted it. But he had like 16 mutual friends with me, so, and they were all my family, so I just figured it was like a family friend or something, or maybe even a family member I didn't know. And it definitely was not him in the picture. I accepted it. Well, come to find out later down the road, this was William. So this was one way that he was like watching me and keeping tabs on me. So the next time that I end up having a issue with William was when Snapchat had started. And I'm pretty sure at this point, I was probably around 22, maybe a little older. I would have to look at documents. I'm pretty sure, hold on. Okay, sorry. So at this point, I was 22 years old, not long after 22. So I had put on Snapchat that I was going to this race that we have here in Knoxville, and it was for breast cancer. And I had shared it on Facebook, Snapchat, pretty much everywhere. A bunch of friends of mine were like taking pictures or whatever. And my grandmother went with us. We get to the race. One of the first people that I recognized at this race is William. Off the bat. I tell my friend and her grandmother, I'm like, hey, that's my stalker over there. We need to go. Well, there happened to be like a bunch of officers, like usually at any race. There's tons of officers at a race. And so my friend's grandmother runs over to the officer and is like, hey, my granddaughter's friend, Stalker, is here. Her grandmother is still parking the car. Is there any way that you can get this man to leave or help us get out of here? You guys, there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Like, it was madness. He's like, sure. He gives us an escort out of there. You guys, this man had no shame. He walks right up to us just like he did in the mall, just like he always did. And he's like, honey, what is your problem? Why are you running away from me? Honey. And I'm like, stop calling me honey. Leave me alone. I don't know who the hell you are. I know nothing about you. I want you to leave me alone. And he's like, I'm never going to leave you alone. We're together. I don't know what you're talking about. And I tell that officer, I'm like, can you please get him away from me? Please. Just get him away from me and I'll be fine. So this is where we're going to leave part 1 off. I'm not going to tell you what ends up happening. It's absolute madness. It ended up taking us over an hour to find my grandmother because my grandmother refused to cut her cell phone on. And so we literally had to drive around and search for her. We had the officer like getting on his radio and like radioing like what my grandmother was wearing, what she looked like in case she had gotten into the race. Like, it took us forever. We finally find her, and it was a whole mess of what happened in between. So be sure that you stay tuned for part 2 because it is very, very interesting. But yeah, you guys, I hope you did enjoy this one. Also, do not be stupid like me. Do not wait to get help when you have someone invading your privacy and, you know, invading where, you know, your personal information and like your personal space and just, you know, anything like that. If you have anybody cyber stalking you, cyber bullying you, you know, stalking you or bullying you in person, like, please do inform someone and get help, because it can get really out of control if you let it go on. Because as you will see in part 2, this person got super duper comfortable with this and thought that he was getting away with it. And the fact that he felt that way, he went further and further and further to the point of almost no return. So just learn from my mistakes per usual. Also, do keep in mind that all of my social medias are down below. And yeah, you guys, until next time, bye.